So to come back, lose to the Hornets, beat the Lakers, which was awesome, but then you lose to the Wizards in another game the Kings should have won, and they just got absolutely blown out by Washington. But something else that happened in that game was Domantas Sabonis hurt his hand, and a report came out yesterday that he actually broke his right thumb. Specifically, the injury was that the Sabonis sustained an avulsion fracture of the ulnar collateral ligament of the right thumb. So I'm not sure what that means exactly, but the injury was confirmed through extensive consultation with the Kings team physicians and an outside specialist. And so Sabonis is listed as questionable for today's game against Denver. So I think that's good news in itself that he's questionable. I don't know how serious a avulsion fracture of the ulnar collateral ligament is, but if he's not missing time right off the bat, I think that's a good sign. What do you think?
Yeah, I think honestly, thumb is better than hand. You can, depending on what the extent of the thumb injury is, you can wrap it up. I mean, it's much easier to contain and to maintain the rigid, like keep your thumb rigid than your whole hand. Because, like, in football, it's like you break your hand, you got to put a club on. You can't do that in basketball.
Yeah.
You can totally play with a hurt thumb in basketball. So that is a big deal.
It is his right thumb, too, which, Sabonis is a lefty.
And that matters.
Yeah.
That totally matters. And it's one of those things where, I mean, I think you want him to play because you're playing the best team in the Western Conference. You're playing the best center in the league. And you want to be able to at least take one of these games. You'd ideally like to be able to protect your home floor. And if you're going to be able to do either of those things, you need Sabonis to be there. And so there's that aspect of it. But then there's also the aspect of, and again, this kind of comes down to the severity of the injury and the specifics of it, which we're not really qualified to comment on 100%. But the question comes up again, do you put a guy through a situation where it can get injured further? What is the risk of that? I wish we knew that off the top of our heads, but this report is kind of just coming out as we're recording this. So, but that kind of comes into question too. And questionable, I mean, he was listed as questionable a couple of games ago for his left hand played. There's a very good chance he ends up playing this game.
Yeah, I mean, like, questionable is a lot better than just being out. And I mean, after losing those first two games of this, or not first two games, or two out of the first three on this homestand, I think that kind of says a little, especially now you're playing against Denver. Like, we're going against Washington or Charlotte. Even when we lost those games, it's like, okay, maybe you sit Sabonis out for these. But, I mean, you're going up against Jokic. I mean, who's the perfect match for Jokic? It'd be Sabonis, right?
Yeah.
So I think that will play a factor. But we'll see. I mean, you said, like, you don't want him to aggravate the injury. We already saw this happen to Fox earlier this year with his foot injury. Report came out saying that he's been playing through discomfort, and it was very uncomfortable for him. And so that obviously affected him. He had a pretty tough 10-game stretch, a few weeks ago where he just didn't look like himself. And I think the Kings paid for it a little. And they should have just sat him out, it seemed like, because he sat out once that report came out. So you don't want the same thing happening to Sabonis. It's like, okay, well, Sabonis is only playing 75% of himself for 5 games in a row. Maybe you just sit him out 2 and then let him get back to 100%.
Maybe. I mean, you brought up a good point around the Fox injury because we were talking about it. It's like, man, it seemed like such a no-brainer that you should have been resting him. But you brought up a good point that they were on a winning streak. They were winning basketball games. And it's like, wow, you wanted to keep that momentum going.
Yeah,
you wanted
that's true.
Really, especially in an early part of the season, to get yourself into a good position going into this time of year. Coming into this home stretch, which brings it tag teams perfectly into the Sabonis issue, because you really want to be able to clean up and get a pretty significantly nice win-loss record over this 19-game stretch where you're playing 15 of them at home, and you've already started off 1-2 at home. And you got a tough ticket here. 2 nights in a row. 2-game series like baseball.
Yeah.
And Jokic is on the mound both nights in a row.
I know. And not only is it a tough matchup, but it's like a matchup everyone's been waiting for all year. Like Sabonis, Jokic. I mean, Sabonis is no Jokic, but man, Sabonis is having a really good year.
They're two elite centers.
Two elite centers, yeah. And so it's something that I know the whole NBA wants to see at this point, not just Kings fans, not just Nuggets fans. So a lot of anticipation for these two games. And so it would definitely suck not seeing Sabonis out there, especially if the Kings just get their ass kicked without him. But
which we'll talk about.
We'll talk about it in a sec, because there's a possibility.
There's a lot of questions that arise with a potential instance where Sabonis is out for even a couple of games.
Yeah, but it does make me, feel a little better that it is his non-dominant hand, which is important, of course. I mean, he is a playmaker, so he needs both hands, to be the most effective. But you don't see. I mean, Sabonis can finish with his right, but it seems like he's more comfortable finishing with his left, at least in scoring wise. So that's good, but. It's a thumb, though. Thumb's different than your pinky. Like your pinky, you can tape it to your ring finger, but your thumb, it's just a little different.
There's a lot of, in terms of grasping the ball, being able to make passes and whatnot.
Exactly.
It'll take some dimension away, but
even setting screens now, your thumb probably gets bumped a lot.
It could, yeah.
Setting that screen.
I mean, he'd probably wear some kind of brace and wrap it up, like some kind of plastic brace. I hurt my thumb before, and they wanted to give me a plastic brace. I'm like, no, I was a kid. I want a cast. I'm out for the year, so you might as well give me a cast. And the guy was like, all right.
Well, what does plastic brace look like?
It was a little like plastic thing. He's like, you just put a little bit of sports tape around it, and it just keeps your thumb in place. Now, again, I don't know what the specifics of that particular fracture is, but if he's questionable, he's a grown man. I feel like it would be something along those lines. It would involve some sports tape.
Yeah. And these are professionals who, they're going to play through discomfort like Fox did.
And then even taking it back to the Fox thing, it's like he had a foot bruise.
Yeah.
You're constantly on your foot.
Now I'm kind of just interested to see.
But it's interesting when you look at Fox's game log through that time. He had so many good games. So it was
I know
one of those things where it lingered, and then it just must have just taken a downturn a week or two before he ended up actually, before it came out in the Sac B.
Yeah, because you're right. Didn't affect him because he said it happened in the Magic game, and he went off in that Magic game and hit that game winner from half court. And he had a great stretch following that too, but it was towards the end, and it's like, oh, okay. Maybe he just caught up to him. I don't know.
And it was the game before that Magic game that he hurt his knee, remember? So it was always weird Charlotte, that it was another...
Because he missed the game before the Charlotte game. Because he came back. He missed the Heat game in Miami.
Yeah.
And then he came and they lost that game on that Hero call. Where they didn't call the travel on Hero.
Yeah, but when are they ever going to call that?
Yeah, it's fair.
Now that we have a couple months removed, let's go back to that. No.
Let's see. Acute traumatic avulsion or rupture of the UCL. Frequent sports injury, if not diagnosed or treated early. May lead to chronic instability, pain, and a loss of pinch and grip strength. I don't know. How do you fix it? Surgically or non-surgically? Plastic or a plaster or splint. Immobilization. So what you were saying.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I think Sabonis as a competitor too, maybe being compared to Jokic so much this year, he wants to go out there too. And these are important games.
I think that's just icing on the cake because now you read that, it just seems like, well, it's not going to be any better tomorrow than it is next week. It seems like maybe that's an exaggeration, but a couple of days later.
Yeah.
So I think he's going to play both games.
He's questionable. I just think that says so much right there.
Yeah.
It was I'm glad.
I thought because we were sitting here ready to record and the report just came out. And so Tony read it and I was expecting out 2 to 3 weeks or out a month or something like that. And I was just like,
I was expecting 1 to 2 weeks.
And he just finished. Yeah, he's questionable for Tuesday's game. I'm like, oh,
yeah,
that's not bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.